I'm Amanda Knox, and you're listening to Hard Knocks. Welcome to Ask Amanda Anything, where you can ask me anything. Just send a message through our contact form on amandaknox.com. I am an open book, truly. Chris is going to be here asking the questions, presumably vetting them. But if you know my husband, he likes to put me on the hot seat. So let's go.
Yes, I'm going to be here to poke, prod, and playfully challenge Amanda to draw out her best answers. And as a reminder, you can submit your questions also through Amanda's Substack, amandaknox.substack.com, and we will prioritize questions and comments from subscribers. Okay, so starting off, we have a question from Joseph. So, my daughter, who is going into her junior year of high school, has already expressed a desire to study abroad when in college in, you guessed it, Italy.
In Perugia, Italy?
I'm very hesitant to allow it due to your story and honestly what I've seen and heard about over there. Any suggestions?
Thank you for reaching out and not just saying no to your daughter. What I will point out is that, I'll point out a couple of things. One is that study abroad, I think, is always, it is a risk, but it's also a beautiful, life-affirming, global community-affirming experience. And so I would highly recommend looking into options for her. And another thing that I will point out is that what happened to me in Italy happened nearly 20 years ago, which was a different time in terms of our ability to stay in touch and to communicate. And if anything, I wonder if, just giving her a bunch of homework ahead of time, like having her read my books and watch the Netflix documentary, will at least put her on her toes enough to have a heightened awareness of red flags and of her own vulnerability going into a scenario like that. Going anywhere abroad is a risk because you are more vulnerable than you would be when you are at home in the comfort of your safety net. But I think that that's also part of the point, is being vulnerable also allows good experiences to come your way. So I think really asking her some really thoughtful questions about what important things she wants to do there, going ahead of going back to Italy. Chris often asked me, why are we doing this questions? And I think that would be a really interesting an exercise to do for your daughter as well, which is offer her opportunities to just off the top of her head communicate why this experience is important to her and what she's hoping to get out of it. And not you sort of getting an answer that you want to hear, just giving her the opportunity to articulate that for herself. And I think that will set her up to have the best experience possible, as well as, making sure that there are layers of people in that other place that you can communicate with, that they can communicate with, who will be the safety net by proxy.
One of the things you've said in response to similar questions in the past is that you don't sacrifice your adultness by asking for help. And even just, we have a 4-year-old daughter now, and she exhibits every day new steps and forms of independence, whether that's riding her bike 30 yards away from us when we're out at a festival in town or something, right? And that degree of stepping away from you and going on her own, even just in that space, is something that we're very acutely aware of as parents. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like for us when our daughter wants to go across the world to another country. How do you think about what it means to be an adult and to be independent from the daughter's perspective, and how that relates to being willing to ask for help when you need it?
Well, I think that it was something that I'm thinking about from a young parent's perspective, is always trying to find ways to say yes to my daughter's desire to be independent and to set parameters that make me feel safe, that make me know that she will be safe, and also making her know that when anything goes down, when something is going down that she feels is bad, she can come to me and not worry about being in trouble. She can come to me, so she can look at me as the kind of parent who is not going to find fault in her, but the kind who will help her find solutions. That, I think, actually is just a human trait that I think we should all carry into our relationships. It's really actually incredibly important to me for the relationships in my life to be not fault-finding relationships, but solution-finding relationships. And so,
Was that an issue for you when you were 20? I mean, were you worried that asking for help would lead to being judged?
I think yes, in part. Yeah, I think that asking for help could be construed as being a burden, and also a reflection upon my abilities or capabilities as an individual. I think I had it built up in my mind that adults are people who accomplish things on their own and don't need to ask for help. And that's, where that independent idea came from. And I think that that is a lie. And I don't even totally know how that idea got instilled in me. I don't know if that was just a cultural thing or a personal thing, but whatever the case may be, I got it in my head that being independent meant that I wasn't relying on my parents anymore, in the ways that I had in the past. And maybe this was just even me thinking about it in terms of like I was no longer leaning on my parents as much financially anymore. Like I was working a lot. And so my understanding of what it meant to be a capable adult was refusing to lean on my parents when I needed help. And that was wrong. So I think just reaffirming also the reciprocal nature of that. Like I want to show my kids that I want to lean on them too, and that that's okay, with the understanding that as the parent, I'm the one who is primarily responsible for being responsible towards them, and it's not actually equal. But I want them to understand, or at least see me in the act of leaning on others so that they understand that that is what a capable adult does.
I mean, I think the worry I have is that even I see Eureka attempting to do something and she'll be like, no, I can do it myself, right? And it's not that she's worried we're going to judge her for needing help. I don't think that's what's happening there. I think it's sort of a natural developmental thing where she wants to test her own abilities. And I don't have a strong instinct about...
Well, that's why you give her my book and have her read my book and see what happens when you are, in fact, overwhelmed. Next question.
Okay. Next question. This is actually related, coincidentally. It comes from a subscriber named Jesse. Thank you, Jesse. Considering all that you've learned about yourself and human nature generally, what traits or qualities do you look for when forming relationships?
Ooh, great question. I tend, well, my little tells for when I interact with people, how do they interact with animals and small children is a big thing for me. Are they just generally kind? Like if there is a person in the room who is feeling awkward, do they go out of their way to try to make everyone in the room feel comfortable? That's something that I look for in people. I like people who do not immediately subscribe to tribal ideologies. Like I like someone who is, I typically find it more interesting when someone has surprising beliefs given or like nuanced, complicated beliefs. So I like someone who has actually thought about what they believe instead of just adopting belief systems based upon, how they identify. And yeah, I mean, little, I'm not an extremely judgmental person. There are very few things that what I would say is I actually tend to be pretty open-minded towards people. And, even those who do have those traits that I find less than attractive, I'm accommodating. Like, everyone's a process. Everyone's on their own journey. If I had to list traits that I like, I like someone who tends to be grateful, as opposed to entitled. I like people who are playful. I like people who are soulful. I like people um, who again, that solution finding as opposed to fault finding. These are traits.
Sounds like you're just describing me.
You're working on it. You are a process.
I mean, one of the things you mentioned here that I really like is that everyone's a process and that you are open-minded towards people. And this is sort of a related question to this idea of what traits you look for, but also, when you encounter traits that you don't like, how do you react to that? And it sounds like, and I've witnessed this, where you've been willing to talk to and develop relationships even with people that exhibit some really negative traits and who are deeply wrong about some important things. And yet you've found value in having a conversation or even a relationship with those people under certain circumstances and with certain boundaries. Yeah. And I'm curious if you can speak a little bit about how you navigate that type of scenario and what it does for you in terms of, giving you access to the good that person has to offer, if you're able to, confine and shape how you interact with the bad that comes with it.
Yeah, I think I'm very much aware that I exist in a world full of people that I can't just exist in a world where I only have people around me who have all of the traits that I like and do not have any of the traits that I don't like. And I think the vast majority of us would do well to realize that and then try to find opportunities to have positive relationships with the people we encounter who may exhibit some really negative traits. So the way that I go about that is I try to find what is, say there's a person who has really negative beliefs about, I don't know, gay people, like whatever. And I try to understand what the feeling beneath the belief is, because I don't think anyone is their set of beliefs, nor do I think that anyone is, I think the closest thing that a person is to anything that they exhibit is their feelings, maybe, because their feelings are an expression of something deep down and visceral. And the feelings are the things that come before thought even. And so I don't tend to judge people based upon their beliefs or their thoughts. I instead try to understand where their feelings are coming from. And I think that feelings ultimately are very universal and very communicable. It's very easy to empathize with a person's feelings, regardless of how they are choosing to express them. And so finding constructive ways to communicate with a person who may have a set of beliefs or a set of thought patterns, which I find to be negative, I tend to find constructive ways of communicating with them by engaging on the level of feelings, especially if I'm confronting them about the thing that I find their belief or their thought pattern to be toxic or negative. Which may mean, choosing when and how to suggest something that would confront or contradict their negative set of beliefs. And instead, I try to find some kind of common ground with somebody. And I tend to find that it is very easy to find something that we have in common that we can relate to. And that is the basis of a positive interaction.
Yeah, I think also that idea that it's not necessarily your duty or obligation in any conversation to have to confront or correct the erroneous belief or toxic feeling that someone has, right? So like if you're talking to that person who hates gay people,
the only
right?
time that I would feel compelled to intervene is if I feel like they are doing something harmful to another human being. And in that case, I think what I might do is, instead of, coming on to the attack of that person, although again, it depends on the relationship. If I can anticipate that that person is actually going to listen to me and value my input and would actually be sort of stopped in their tracks if I were to confront them about it, of course I would confront them about it. But if there's somebody who would just sort of get defensive and dig in their heels, my impulse to intervene wouldn't be in the confrontation of that person. It would be on the behalf of the person who is being hurt. So I would come to their aid and come to their, comfort. And I think that's a really useful thing that I've learned about since being a parent is you don't want to reinforce negative behavior by giving all of your attention to it. Instead, what you want to do is reinforce positive behaviors by coming to the aid of those who have been hurt. And I think that is very useful, both for toddlers and for adults.
Yeah. Well, and I think that people are more inclined to listen to you when you have some sort of rapport built up. And so if your entire conversation with somebody is focused on countering or getting into conflict with them about the thing you disagree with, you're probably not going to have much luck changing their mind about it. Whereas if you engage with them on your common ground things,
setting
three
some
conversations down the road.
Common ground does a lot of groundwork, does a lot of like foreplay.
Common ground foreplay.
Yes, do that.
Okay, next question. This comes from Steven. I listened to your interview with Joe Rogan. I don't often listen to Rogan, but your conversation and humor and his reactions to you and shared humanity were transformative for me. I thank you. I also constantly think about your thrift shop versus department store comment. I think about it a lot. Best of luck in your work. So I just want you to reflect upon that thrift shop department store comment. I'm going to repeat it for people who may not be familiar with it. But I think Stephen is right that this is a really important metaphor that you've hit on for navigating life.
It's so funny, too, because it's just like, what a silly thing to say. But yes, so for those who are not aware of my analogy here is that there are two ways to confront, life. One is with a department store mindset and one is with a thrift store mindset. So when you go to the department store, you come with a list of things that you need to buy. You come with a set of expectations that you are going to walk down all of the aisles and accumulate those things that you want, be it, size toddler for underpants and, paper towels and, seafood pate, cat food, you have your list of things, you go in, you get those things, you take them out. That is, I think, a way that a lot of us approach life. We have a set of expectations about what we want to get out of it. We go into life and we follow the path that we imagine will take us to the things that we need. We get in, we get out, bam, bam, bam. I think that is a mistake because I do not think that life is actually a department store. I think that life is more like a thrift store where it has a whole bunch of stuff in it, but you can't anticipate that it's going to have all the things you need. So, or that you think you need. So if you go into a thrift store with a list of things that you need to take home with you, you are inevitably going to come home disappointed. You are not going to get that perfect fitting black satin dress and those, red pumps, and also, that classic children's book that you've been looking for. Like you just don't know what you're going to, life is not a department store. You don't know what going in, what you're going to find. But the beauty of thrift store shopping is that you don't know what you're going to find. You're going to find something, and it's going to be amazing. And if you are open to what life is willing to send your way, it might be a mushroom-shaped lamp that you didn't know you needed, and yet it is like the thing that just fills your heart with joy as soon as you see it, and it's only $5, and you're like, what is this amazing experience that I'm having? So me personally, just in real life, I rarely ever go shopping at department stores, and I am constantly going in and out of thrift stores because I enjoy that experience of walking into a space with an open mind and allowing the experiences or these objects to come my way, and to sort of be flexible and nimble with what it is that I'm taking home with me. And so that is the analogy, the metaphor, that like in life, if we all had more of a thrifting mindset, I think that we would have more gratitude for the things that we do encounter, and we would be less disappointed by the things that we expect to encounter but don't.
So a few follow-ups here. One is that I've gone thrifting with you plenty, and sometimes, we go into a thrift shop and you walk out empty-handed and you strike
totally
out and there's nothing. Yeah. And I think an important part of this is also recognizing or remembering that, yes, you might walk away with something amazing that you didn't expect, but sometimes you walk away with nothing. And you also have to be okay with the idea that like, it takes multiple times, that it's a roulette wheel in some sense, and that
life is like
some
that
days
too.
there's nothing for you.
Life is like that too. Like you're gonna take swings, and you're gonna miss, and you're gonna you're gonna have lost something. So that's life. Again, it's just not a department store.
Second follow up, if you really do want that black satin dress that's just in your size and those red pumps that fit your feet exactly, there's a way for you to get it, and it's Amazon, right? Or a variety of other equivalent online digital places. And my question is about, we live in a world where there are these institutions like Amazon, I'm singling them out, but there's many, many of them, right? That are designed to try and cater to our desires and needs and to fulfill those desires instantly in exactly the way we want. And we pay a premium to have those things available for us. And when you have to go to that party and you need this exact thing, you go on Amazon. Yeah, I've seen you do it, right? Like there's times when you do that, but like, how does that shape us? How does living in that world where these institutions are catering to our grocery list mindset, how does that affect us more broadly in life? And what do you think about or recommend in terms of maintaining a healthy thrift store attitude in life when you're constantly being confronted with services and entities and corporations that are attempting to feed your I want this thing exactly mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I think that places like Amazon provide us with the illusion of abundance, but in the process of doing so, limit our imaginations. So it's a paradox where presumably Amazon has everything that you could possibly need and anything you could possibly look for, but it actually caters to a very limited, like the algorithm is trying to sell you a limited set of products. And so suddenly everyone is like using the same water bottle because when they typed up water bottle at, for Amazon, like the first thing that pops up that's like the sort of recommended Amazon Prime thing is this
Yeah.
one,
20,000 reviews.
20,000 reviews.
Yeah.
It's the one water bottle that's at the top, and you're in a hurry, so you just click that water bottle, and suddenly you have the same water bottle. Like I've actually noticed this where like especially this water bottle thing where like I even got tricked. Like I just needed a water bottle, and so I ordered it, and then the next thing I knew, like a few weeks later, I'm walking around and I'm like, why does everyone have my exact same water bottle? And it's because Amazon tricked us into thinking that we're making a choice for ourselves.
It's because it's a good water bottle.
No,
though.
actually, it wasn't the best water bottle, and I don't use it anymore because it's not my favorite. But the point
you're not talking about the Contigo water bottle with the little flippy top?
No, that's not the water. That's my favorite water bottle. The water bottle that they sold me was a different one that was too big for my hand. Anyway, the point is that I think that this first of all, there's the illusion of abundance. There are so many freaking water bottles at thrift stores that are perfectly good, and I think that using a thrifting mindset is also good for not just feeding this sort of consumeristic habit of needing to take something new every time, to like recognize that there are legitimate objects that are useful that you should just like encounter in life and will find you at the right moment. It's having a little bit more faith in the universe, just providing. And although someone might argue that Amazon is the universe providing, it's providing with. So the problem with Amazon is that its primary focus isn't to provide, it is to make money. And making money cheaply does not involve finding the right water bottle for the right person. It's finding a water bottle and selling it to as many people as humanly possible. So that's
a new water
the
bottle,
difference.
while the perfectly good ones languish on thrift store shelves.
So I think that having more of
All right. I think we should move on to the next question.
Last question.
Last question. Okay, well, All right, I have one here from Joe, who says, I'm a freelance video editor in British factual TV, and over the years I've grown disillusioned by how even harmless shows...
Just calling it British factual TV makes...
Well...
Continue.
For all I know, that's just the sort of British term for like unscripted... reality TV. Yeah.
American reality TV is just as laughable, but continue.
Yes. I've grown disillusioned by how even harmless shows that I work on use various tools to carve up their own reality to form heavily produced narratives. Splicing words to form new sentences, Frankensteining is just one common example of many. I've long wanted to expose these mostly hidden tools and educate audiences exactly how their perceptions are shaped by the minds of producers, almost inviting people into the edit chair somehow. I'm, of course, aware of my contradiction. I work in TV, but despise it. It's a job I'm good at. I need to find a way to transition away from mainstream media in due course. We're at a time where more people are shunning mainstream media than ever before, but they still have unchecked power, so there's always work to be done, and your voices are so important. This is someone, I think, reacting to the Blood Money series we did a little while ago, talking about the ethics of true crime, especially. So yeah, do you have any reflections on the ethics of media in nonfiction storytelling related to these practices? One follow-up I would add is, do you think that things are ethically better in the non-traditional new media than they are in mainstream media? Where's your head at on these topics?
Well, so I think it's a complicated thing. I think that storytelling, by its very nature, requires sculpting reality. It's picking and choosing. It is shaping. It is dramatizing reality. Even when, something is unscripted, you are crafting a story, and that story, especially if it's on factual or reality TV, it's still a story, right? Like if we just gave everybody unfiltered reality, they would get bored by it, honestly. Like it wouldn't be entertaining anymore because there wouldn't be a story arc to it. We respond to stories. That's why we tune in. The Truman Show idea of just like watching a guy doing his life in all of its minute details, I don't think is actually realistic. I mean,
is that the most unrealistic part of the Truman Show that anyone would care?
This idea that like
Yeah.
everyone is tuning into one guy, maybe like the novel concept of it. But if there was like a new guy every once in a while, like I just don't buy that people would be like following that person closely,
again,
right? Like it's just boring. So instead, you are crafting a narrative. But I think the problem is that because so many different reality or factual TV shows are in competition with each other, they're trying to not just distill reality to the most dramatic version of its essence. They are distorting reality so that it can fit into a prescribed story arc that they are trying to manipulate and construct, both pre and post production, because in the pre-production part they might like get people drunk or like sort of instigate them and say, like, there's lots of ways that like people in reality or factual TV are manipulated to act out in ways that they wouldn't otherwise to create drama. And then on the post-production side, there's that Frankensteining effect where you are not actually conveying what they were saying. You are doing what they did in that episode of Homer Simpson The Simpsons when he is accused of like touching that girl's butt when actually he was taking off a gummy bear off of her butt, the gummy Venus de Milo or whatever. And they're like, you can see the clock in the corner just going back and forth in time as they're like Frankensteining his narrative in a really obvious way. Like that's obviously unethical. And the Simpsons were making fun of that. And which honestly dates this practice, for ages. But like, so yeah, I mean, I think the idea of bringing people into the editor's chair is actually a really fascinating idea. And I think people would be really into that. Like, if anything, it sounds like you have a great concept for a reality TV show is what I'm hearing. I think that there's nothing wrong with like, we've done this on the podcast in the past where somebody is like telling their story and it's taking them a second to really like figure out how to articulate their narrative. And so what we'll do in the edit is once we figure out what the essence of what they're really trying to say, we'll chop out all of the extra parts that are them wandering around and not being coherent because we want to present the best version of what they intended to say. And I think that's where it is ethical, is when somebody who is watching this goes, oh, I actually appreciate the editor for doing that work.
You made me sound so
eloquent.
Yeah.
Whereas, obviously, it's unethical if the person comes away going, I did not say that. That's not what I meant. Oh, my God. And now I'm dealing with the reputational costs of your editing choices. Like, that's obviously unethical. And I think the problem is that, the industry isn't incentivized to be ethical in that way, which is why I think a reality show that calls out the unethicalness of the industry is really fascinating. So I wish you all luck with that.
I mean, to compare this with like podcast land for a moment, an interesting, which is, I hadn't made this connection before, but it's probably the closest thing we have to something like The Truman Show. Like how many hours of Joe Rogan just sitting in a room talking to his friends are out there on the internet, right? If you want to just eavesdrop on someone's life like that, there's people out there, and you're one of them, who are making a portion of their intellectual and social life publicly eavesdroppable, essentially.
Yeah, and in a specific setting. It's a constructed setting.
It's true. In a constructed setting, but the kind of podcast we were making a few years ago, where they're highly produced and scripted and voiceover and all that. It's different than what's happening here on Hard Knocks now, and is more in line with this model of getting two people into a room and just letting them talk for an hour and a half or whatever it is, right? And in that model, there's no editing. And the no editing model circumvents this Frankensteining issue. It circumvents the you misrepresented me type issue. And people tune into that. They like that. And I think one of the things that they're getting out of that is this sense of authenticity. The conversation has not been manipulated and produced and shaped to present a particular narrative for me. It's just, I'm getting the unfiltered person here, And that seems like actually a ethical turn in the right direction in some important ways. I think one of the problems with podcast land is coming along with that. You lose some of the things that mainstream journalism and media used to be really good at, which was fact checking and research departments, and the money that could go into making sure that the information you're conveying is actually good information.
You also lose storytelling.
Well, you also lose storytelling. It's true.
So,
I mean, it's a different product.
It's a very different product, and yeah, you can do that for 3 hours, maybe, if you're the kind of person who has 3 hours on hand. But that's a marathon for the people who are creating that content and also for the people who are consuming it. And I think that sort of leaves the audience in the editor's chair, where they're just sort of like skipping ahead or skipping through or only half listening, and they're letting their subconscious do the editing work. And if that's your jam, that's your jam. But I wouldn't sit down in a movie theater with my popcorn to watch a 3-hour long Joe Rogan interview. I don't know if anyone would, I don't think,
Yeah. People are driving, they're doing the dishes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I have one last quick question, and it is from Christopher, who asks, do you look back fondly on your Jesuit education?
That's not a quick question at all. No, that's not a quick question.
Well, no.
No, that's not a quick question at all.
Are you refusing to answer?
I think we need to leave that for another time. That's not a quick question.
You don't even have an off the top.
No, it's not a quick question.
No. Okay, we struck a nerve here. All right, I guess we're going to save that for the next episode of Ask Amanda Anything.
Looking forward to it.
So she has time to formulate a very deep, we're going to expect a very deep, thoughtful response.
It's just going to be a long
Jesuit
response.
question.
It's not a yes or no question.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us. If you want to reach out again, you can submit questions and comments at amandaknox.substack.com. You can also reach Amanda at amandaknox.com, and we will prioritize questions and comments from subscribers. Thank you to all of our subscribers over here.
Thank you so much. I hope you're loving it.